What is up, guys? Welcome back to Own the Hunt. Long time no see. I'm here to talk to you guys about the new Bering Optics Super Yoter LRF. Stick around. Okay, guys, well, like I mentioned, we're here to talk about the Bering Optics Super Yoter LRF thermal scope. I debated on making this review. I've sat on this scope for a handful of months now, put it through its paces, used it in the field, tested it at home, went through all the functions, the features, and I've got a good amount to say about this scope. It has a lot of pros, but it has some cons for me. And some of the cons are not really the scope's fault. I'm gonna start with the cons, I think, because I think that there's a lot of buzz about the scope. People have talked about it. It took Bering a long time to get this scope out into the field and into the hands of hunters. So I'm just gonna cover the cons right off the bat, and then we'll get into the pros and some of the footage from the scope. But before we do that, just want to give a massive shout out to Logan at Fall River Shooters, you guys. Logan has helped me so much with this channel. He's helped me grow. Logan's a distributor, or not a distributor, a dealer of pretty much all thermal scopes on the market. He's got AGM, he's got Pulsar, he's got Bering Optics, he's got Ricks. I mean, you name it, he's got it. Really great guy, and I can't say enough about Logan over there at Fall River Shooters. So give him a shout, you guys. Tell him Cody from Own the Hunt sent you. Let's jump into this review, you guys. So, cons. Number one con for me is how long it took Bering to get this scope out, you guys. They teased the scope for over a year. Had some kind of talk about it and lots of promises. I know they released it at, showed it at SHOT Show, and then it was over a year before they got it into the hands of consumers. So kind of a con there, because while they were doing that, other companies kind of brought scopes to the market that really rival this scope, both at price point and at performance. So kind of a con there for me. And then I guess the next biggest con is that it runs on AA batteries. Okay, that's a massive con for me. Now, with that said, the AA batteries are rechargeable that they send with it. They send you four, maybe 8 actually. I'll double check that, put it down below. But the rechargeable AA's, I was actually pretty impressed. You get pretty good runtime out of them, somewhere around 4 to 4.5 hours on the rechargeable AA's, and that's pretty solid, especially given that you've got a laser rangefinder on this unit. So that laser rangefinder is over here on the side, you guys. It sticks off the scope a little bit. At first, when I saw the models of this scope, I thought this was going to be a terrible design. I didn't think it was going to hold up, but I got to tell you, the housing of this scope is very, very nicely done. It's really rugged. This LRF unit is not going anywhere. It's really stout. It's built well. It's bolted right onto the scope, which is another cool thing. So this scope's put together by basically all screws. You can see screws here all the way up the unit, screws that hold the LRF on, screws that hold this side panel on. The whole unit is able to be taken apart and serviced in the US. It doesn't have to go back to overseas to have any work done. So that's pretty cool, but that's another con. So Bering's customer service has kind of lacked and fallen off in the past year or so. Their response times are not that good. Their turnaround times are not that good. So keep that in mind when you try to make a decision on like a thermal scope that you're gonna use a lot. That time when you're down and out, if your scope should have a malfunction, is time you could be out in the field hunting that you can't. So keep that in mind. Next con for me is this button layout up here. Really not a big fan of this type of button layout. It's kind of just like a single line of buttons, which is fine and all, but they're kind of recessed down in the scope, and then there's these little protrusions that come up on top of the scope, and they're really low. Logan has actually made some 3D printed button caps, or caps that go over these little raised protrusions, and it actually kind of helps to separate these buttons a little more, so like if you had gloves on or something, you can feel those buttons, and those definitely do help. He sent a few with the scope, and I tried them out, and they do make a difference. But like I said, I'm not a big fan of these button layouts. The other thing too is, like, there's no zoom wheel on this scope. There's no magnification dial, and so to zoom on the scope, you literally have to press this button like a million times to zoom in. It steps in very slowly, And so because of that, in order to magnify a lot, you have to press the button a lot to magnify. So I'm not a big fan of that. Like I mentioned, housing wise, big fan of the housing. Really love this design as far as the scope goes. The back diopter focus ring, super buttery smooth, really like that. You guys know, if you follow the channel, I'm not a huge fan of these rubber eye cups. This one's actually good. I don't mind it. It works really well with this scope, and the eye relief is nice. You can really move this scope back and forth on your rail as you need to. Works really well. This one here came with their standard Bering Optics mount, but they do offer this scope with a LaRue Tactical or LaRue Tactics 2D mount as well. I think it's an upcharge of like a couple $100 maybe. Honestly, the one Bering makes is fine. I don't see any issues with it, so I don't know. I mean, I'll probably have a hard time spending the extra cash for the LaRue. LaRue makes amazing stuff, you guys. If you've ever used a LaRue mount, you know they're phenomenal. But up here on the front, you've got your front focal ring. So I guess I do have a complaint here. Okay, so like, if you are a righty shooter, which I am not, I'm a lefty, which this happens to work better for me, right? But if you're a righty shooter, you got to get your hand kind of over around this ring, and the LRF unit kind of gets in the way. It's just not perfect, okay? Like, there's some things that should have been taken into consideration, and so I'm gonna ding them on that a little bit. The focus ring, not great for a righty shooter. Works great for a lefty. I really like it. So next thing, scope cap. I like this scope cap a lot. It's a very strong plastic. It's not a cheap plastic. The hinge is done nicely. It's not gonna break on you. You can fold it straight down against your rail or your barrel. You can turn it to the side. I probably wouldn't turn it to this side because now you're gonna cover your LRF unit, but you could turn it to this side if you wanted to. Flips all the way back around. You guys know I love that. I hate my caps sticking out like that. So that's good. Another cool thing they did with this scope is they put a little rubber flap here, but underneath this rubber flap is a magnetic connection point for a charger cable. And what you can do is, they include this cable, and I'll show you that, but what you can do is you can pop that cable on. It's pretty short, it's like 12 inches or whatever, and then you could run a battery pack up on your rifle. And I gotta tell you guys, if you're not a fan of AA's, which I'm not, it might make a lot of sense to go ahead and get a battery pack, run that cord, and now, you know, you've taken care of the problem of running AA batteries. So I really like what Bering did with that. I think it's nicely done. And I like that it's magnetic too, because if like that cord gets snagged on anything, it's not gonna break a connection internally in the scope. So like, it just comes off, you know, it's not an issue at all. So I love what they did there. That rubber cap is a very like positive click in, so like no water's getting in there. This thing's really super watertight, you guys. I'd have no issues hunting like in the rain with this. While we're talking about it, I'll show you guys the battery door. This does take quite a few spins to open up, so you guys, I'm not a big fan of that. I like, you know, quick opening doors, but I have to give it to Bering on this. They tethered the door to the scope with some really nice micro cord. It's not rubber that's gonna break, it's micro cord, it's on there, it's gonna stay there for a long time. And I gotta give them props, because like the N-Vision Halo, which is like some people's holy grail of all thermal scopes, it has no tether to the battery door cover. And so what happens is, like, you're out in the dark or whatever, you open that battery door and you drop that door, and heaven forbid you drop it in the snow, because now like it's fallen in the snow, you don't know where it went, you're digging for it in the cold. So kudos Bering for putting a proper tether on your battery door. As you can see, 4 AA's in there. You know, part of the reason I'm not a fan of AA's is because to get any kind of runtime, you need multiple of them, you know, 4 or better. And the problem is now you're managing 4 individual batteries. And even though you get decent runtime out of these, so like you could probably get a decent night of hunting out of just a single set of batteries. But, you know, to make the swap, you gotta take all 4 of these out, and then you gotta put 4 back in. And that's just a pain, to be honest with you. So that's my problem. That's like my #1 complaint with this thing. Aside from that, man, You know, this is a solid scope. Image quality on this thing, very good. Very, very, very good image quality. It's a 640 scope, so you would expect a really good image quality out of this thing. And it does not at all disappoint. The detail, the clarity, you know, just the sharpness of the image, phenomenal. There's a lot of really good adjustment settings in this scope for contrast and brightness and things like that. So Bering didn't let us down with that. The video quality or image quality is phenomenal. And the video quality is really good too. So when you extract video off of this scope, which you can use the Bering app, which the app is actually phenomenal as well. I really enjoyed their app, and they have a really cool custom reticle builder. So you can build a custom reticle for this, and you can, you know, set up different hash marks for different holds out to certain yardages. And Logan has actually done a lot of testing with the custom reticle builder on this scope, and he's found some very, very good results. As long as you input your data, your ballistics data properly, you can really do some cool stuff with the custom reticles on this thing. So love that about it. Something I didn't mention about this scope yet is the NETD rating, which I think a lot of people are starting to finally understand much better, because it's become one of the biggest driving forces in thermal image clarity and thermal image detail. Is the NETD rating seems to be something that just every thermal scope manufacturer is pushing the envelope on. And Bering, this is a sub 35 millikelvin NETD rating on this scope, which is not groundbreaking. Years ago, like probably 3 years ago, we were pretty much standardized at like sub 40 millikelvin, and so this is a sub 35. I gotta give it to Bering though. I think that they're giving a realistic number, and I think that they're achieving that NETD rating through actual thermal sensor rather than with internal computing and internal algorithms, okay? And so something I think everyone should know is that a lot of these thermal scopes that are hitting the market now that are claiming, you know, below, you know, sub 20 millikelvin ratings with the size of the thermal sensor on them, the only way they're able to really achieve that is through compute processing inside the scope and using algorithms and digital computing. And what can happen there is you can actually have a bit of a lag between or a delay between what the thermal scope is pulling in for data that it sees and what you see on the screen back here. So keep that in mind. So I actually want to give Bering a shout out. I think that they could have easily called this, you know, a sub 25 millikelvin scope and probably done a little bit more compute processing in the scope and maybe even got the image a little better, and got it to achieve, you know, better performance in poor weather conditions. But man, they really did a great job with the image quality. So if Bering is a company you want to support, you like Bering, you know, you like their warranty, which their warranty is really good as well. I mean, the thing is there's so many scopes on the market now that rival this scope, and for better price points, and it's a hard sell for me right now, I guess, is what I'm getting at. But I didn't want to sleep on this scope. I didn't want to not put a review out because it is a good scope. It's extremely well built. This thing's a tank, you guys, and it is a pleasure to look through. The screen is very nice. It's got the newer menu system from Bering, which I really like. The laser rangefinder works extremely well. The picture-in-picture is nice. You know, there's a lot to like about the scope. So that's why I wanted to bring a review to you guys. Real quick, I'm going to show you what comes in the bag you get with this scope. Bering gives you this really nice kind of like vinyl fake leather bag. It's very nice. Comes with a Velcro patch on the front. It says Super Yoter LRF. So if you're a patch nerd, they got you covered. So in the bag, basically you're gonna get kind of your standard stuff, but they do send you a 4-bay AA charger. They also send the batteries for that as well. And then also in the bag, you get that magnetic charge cable I told you guys about. So you can see it's got kind of a, I'll take it right out of the bag for you. It's got kind of a magnetic head on it here, and then just a USB on this end, and it's about 12 inches long or so. So perfect to go like right from your scope to your rail, plug into a battery pack and run it that way. And I'll show you guys this thing connects very nicely. So like it's on there nice, it's not going anywhere, it can spin freely, but if you were to snag something, it can come off. And I like that. You're not gonna break the scope, you're not gonna damage a charge port or something like that. So big kudos. I think it's a good design. I like that. The only downside, right? So with everything, you know, everything cool like this, there's gotta be a downside. This is a proprietary cable. And so you're not gonna be able to just go out to Walmart and grab a new cable should you lose this one. That's a little bit of a downside. You know, it could ruin a night for you if you happen to lose the cable or something, and didn't have AA's on hand if you're running off the battery pack. They do include some thermal targets, which is cool. I've seen a lot of companies going to these and including them in their scope package, so really like that. One of the things Logan does, and he actually makes these are 3D printed. A lot of people were complaining that the rubber eye cap could come off, and so Logan makes these, and they're basically a rubber eye cap ring that kind of slides on and basically holds tight tension against that rubber eye cap, and it kind of makes it way harder or almost impossible for this rubber eye cap to come off. So just a nice little detail. It doesn't get in the way of the rear diopter focus. So that's kind of a cool little goodie that Logan throws in with these scopes, as well as those raised button caps that he 3D prints as well. And these are those caps. So they're pretty small, but the way they work is you take them out and basically they got a little indent on the bottom. You just press them onto the scope, and then it makes like a nice raised thing. And so if you got both of them on there, you can totally index your fingers to where you know exactly which buttons you're pressing. Whoop, that one came off on my finger. These were an earlier prototype that Logan did, so he may have made some changes to make them a little bit tighter, but essentially now you can index your fingers in there and you know exactly what buttons you're on. So that's really all you get in the package with the scope. But one thing I want to talk about is if you do opt for one of these scopes, which you wouldn't be sorry, you guys. This is a great scope, you wouldn't be sorry. There's just some other scopes on the market that I would probably opt for over this, but if Bering is a company you stand behind, you know you've had Bering optics in the past, you want to stay with them, by all means, this scope is a very, very good scope. Image quality, very good. So you wouldn't be sorry. Also, audio quality is very good on this scope, you guys. That's something I don't think a lot of people talk about enough. It's starting to get some traction, but for me, audio quality is right up there with some of the most important specs on a scope, because I'm trying to make content for my YouTube channel with it, and this scope is no slouch with audio quality. Very, very good microphone on this thing, crystal clear, picks up about everything you would want to pick up, and no complaints there at all. And you guys know I'll be the first to tell you if the audio quality was not good, and this one's solid. So if audio quality is something really important, that alone might sway you towards this scope. So big pro there. So if you guys pick up this scope, I would highly recommend you pick up an additional set of batteries. And so Logan did some testing over there at Fall River Shooters, and he tested numerous different AA batteries. And so the batteries they send along with the scope, they're made by a company called EBL. They're a 3,000 milliwatt hour, 1.5 volt lithium ion rechargeable AA. And so Logan did some testing, and he found that Bering Optics must have also done some testing, because the batteries he had the best results with were actually identical to the batteries Bering sends with the scope. So you can get, for not a ton of money, like somewhere around 50 bucks, you can get a pack of 8 additional AA batteries, and they come in these nice little plastic cases. You can toss these right in your chest pack or a backpack, or just keep them in the truck. But that gives you a ton more runtime, and then it also comes with an 8-bay charger. So now not only do you have 8 more batteries plus an 8-bay charger to keep them all charging at the same time, you have the 4-bay charger that comes with the scope, plus the 4 batteries they give you with the scope. You got 12 batteries here, you got a ton of runtime. I knock the battery system pretty heavily, but another neat thing about AA's, so I know I'm not a fan, right? So, but I'm trying to find the silver lining here and figure out what was Bering Optics thinking when they chose AA as their battery system. And one of the neat things is if you ran out of juice, or you know your batteries were dying and you didn't realize you didn't charge them the night before, whatever it may be, you can literally go to any store and pick up batteries and run this scope. And so if you're a guy who likes to plan for the future, as far as, you know, shit hit the fan scenarios in the world, this thermal scope might be something you would consider just on that alone, because, you know, you'll almost always be able to get AA batteries. I mean, you get them at any store, most homes have them in them, and so that could be a big pro for some people. For me, it's really not. It's more of an inconvenience, and so for that, I ding it. But, you know, for you, you may love it. And with that said, guys, I would highly recommend this scope if you're a fan of Bering. You know, you want good image quality, you want a laser rangefinder, and maybe some of the other scopes with laser rangefinders, price points are a little bit higher. Those are the people I would recommend this scope to. You know, it's a 3-power, 3x base magnification, so it's going to be awesome for coyote hunters that want to shoot a little bit longer ranges. Still going to work great for hog hunters. You know, it's a good all-around scope. I would recommend it for those reasons. And so I decided to put the review out, guys. You know, it's definitely not my pick, not my personal pick for a 3x scope with a laser rangefinder. My personal pick for that is the Pulsar XG50 LRF, which is what I'm currently running. I think it's a phenomenal scope, especially with Pulsar's ballistic rangefinding. So there you have it, guys. That's my thoughts on the Bering Optics Super Yoter LRF. And don't forget, if you're interested in one of these scopes or any thermal scope, thermal monocular, give Logan a shout over at Fall River Shooters, fallrivershooters.com. He's got his phone number on there. Give him a phone call. He is super helpful and would love to earn your business. And with that, guys, we'll see you next time on the Hunt.
Okay, I'm going to go through the menu here, show some of the image adjustments you can make. Right now, there's white hot. I can switch that to highlight, which is kind of like a white hot, but makes the whites extremely white and everything kind of darker around it, so it kind of just highlights the white hot. You got color, so this is like kind of like the fusion mode on most other scopes. They're calling it color. You've got red hot. That is what it sounds like. Everything hot turns red. You got your typical black hot. Everything hot is black. Everything not as hot is shades of white and gray. And then you got your white hot. This is what I prefer on pretty much every thermal scope I've used. So then if you come down, you've got screen brightness. This is pretty cool. So this, I don't know if this will be discernible on the video, probably not, but this is the actual brightness of the screen in my eye. It's got 5 levels. Go down, you got image sharpness. Now this will be discernible on the video. So if I look at that and I turn that sharpness down, we're on 1, there's 5. So I'll toggle between 1 and 5. There's 1, there's 5. There's 1, there's 5. And you'll notice if you look, that's a window right there. And if you look at the window trim, you'll notice that there's much more detail in the 5 than the 1. And so I'm not really sure how they're accomplishing that, but it's really good, as long as it doesn't come with some type of latency or image grain or anything like that. Whoops, the menu timed out on us. So this is the big menu. I'm not going to go into that right now. This is the small menu. So put that back into white hot. Let's go down. This is your zeroing distance. This is your image brightness. Now I'm sure this will be discernible in the video. So as you can see, we've got 5 levels of that. That's very bright. This is not as bright. And 1 is really almost unusable. And then down here, you've got image contrast. So this is going to be the difference between your lights and darks. So if we, go back down to that, we turn that up. You've got 1 through 5 here as well, and you can see I'll toggle between 1 and 5. There's 1, there's 5. So 5 is going to be your highest contrast setting. I really like going with 4 on this. And then for the image brightness, I liked 4 as well. Gives me a nice bright image, but not overly bright.
Drop sideways. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah. 1,
2.
2.
Don't shoot. Don't shoot. He's hit hard. He's hit hard.
You sure?
Yeah, he's pissing blood. He's pissing blood.
Okay.
Turn that call up a little.
Good.
300 even.
Okay, let's do it.
Booger bark.
Let's do it.
1, 2. Alright, leave it.
Did it lay down?
Yeah, it might be. It might have got hit.
I think it did. You shooting it again?
Yep.